I look back at all this, man, as like a movie I once saw too. It doesn't even feel like my life. Not that my life is so good that it doesn't, but it's just like, it's been so long since all of that was like pertinent. I have to really stay intentional on just staying in the moment nowadays.
For sure, dude.
Than to be stuck in the past or be obsessing over the future. I don't want to miss the beauty of today because I'm too busy thinking about the past or the future.
Yeah.
So I stay here. But when I reminisce over this stuff, usually on podcast, I'm like, damn, that's crazy.
What up, gang? Welcome to the X5 Podcast. I'm your host, David Lynham. If this is your first time watching this today or listening, make sure you rate, view, and subscribe. Click that notification bell, please. It helps us. And if you would just leave a comment anywhere on the video, it would really help us out. We are running on a skeleton crew today. I've got my co-host with me today, Terry Sharp, everybody.
Okay.
And our special guest today, man, I've got so many questions. I just want to jump into it. I don't even have time to introduce this guy. I've got so many questions for him. But we have Danny Boy O'Connor with us today from House of Pain. And
all right.
He's got quite a story to tell about everything that's been going on since House of Pain, dude.
Yeah,
He's
had
a
bit of everything. Yeah, you said you're going to jump right into it. I see what you did there.
No, that does make me look like a genius, but really that was accidental. But man, you grew up in that like first things first. You grew up in that like skateboarding culture, right? And punk rock scene.
Yeah, not as much skateboarding. I mean, I did. Yeah, so
I was a shitty skater too, by the way. So
okay, yeah.
I was in the culture, but it's just shitty at it.
So me too, both with exception. Yeah, but it is. It's one of those things where. So I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
We came to LA when I was 6 years old. And one of the first things my mother told me was she was like, you're going to get a skateboard when we move to California and you're going to go to school with this thing. And at 6 years old, I couldn't even envision what that was. I had never seen one before. So I thought I'd put my roller skates on and there was like a wooden board that just went all the way to school that I would skate on. That's how out of it I was. And then I got my first skateboard and it was actually like one of those Nash. There was like it's called like
Nash. I remember Nash
was
dude.
one, but I think you know what? Honestly, I think the first one I got was the Black Knight or whatever it was called. It had like a jousting looking Black Knight on it, and it was thick wood and it was clay wheels with those loose ball bearings. And the second you hit a rock, you were off the
done.
So I didn't. So yes, it was all new to me coming from New York to LA, and that was like in 76. So 76, 77, 78. Skateboarding was starting to really blow up. I always wanted a Tony Alva board and Kryptonic wheels and all of that stuff.
That's shit. Some slap balls.
Well, that's even after. But I grew up right like in the epicenter of that because I grew up not far from Reseda, California, in Canoga Park, California, where there was a place called Skate Across, which was an old A&W root beer location that they then turned into a skate park, and they still kept the awnings for the cars because you could see them, and it's a famous place, and everybody who's anybody, you know, ripped that spot. But yes,
he's not talking like a California ripped that spot.
Yeah, well, that was but that was, so I would go back. Me and Terry were talking on the ride here. So I have my love of like, you know, I'll go anywhere. When Billy, first of all, if I want to shout out Billy Morrison, man, because he was the one who plugged me in with you guys. And he was like, hey, mate, I got
mate. Yeah, like Billy Morrison.
Yeah, he's like, listen, bro, if I got an opportunity for you in Alabama. I was like, yes, I'm in. And I've never been to Alabama. Beautiful state.
Awesome.
I love that kind of thing. And I used to get shipped back to New York and New Jersey every summer or most summers. And it was
Cali?
From Cali.
Wow.
After being transplanted there with my aunts and uncles. And I say this to say that in the 70s, you know, late 70s, Vans as a sneaker, which we all know and love now. I'm looking around and nobody's wearing any Vans today, but it's a common, you know, everybody knows what that, but in the 70s, that was a local thing. That was something that only people knew. Older cats knew it because they could buy a pair in the ads in the back of a skateboard or a surfer magazine, but they were literally a small Southern California company with very little distribution across the US. What I'm saying is in the 70s and 80s, the world was a much different place, and New York and LA, it was like two different planets. And so I would go back every summer and I'd be wearing OP shorts and a lightning bolt shirt, Vans. And the kids were like, yo, like they didn't even know what planet I was from. The older kids were like, yo, you're from Cali? I'm like, yeah, no doubt. And they're like, yo. They knew by how I dressed, yo, something was different. But after spending 3 months there, I would come back and I might be wearing, Puma Clydes and rocking a Yankees cap. And then they were like, yo, you from New York? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, say quarter. I'm like, quarter.
You get to be cool
say
all
water,
the time, dude.
Well, it was like an exchange student, if you will.
That's perfect.
No, it was. And I tell you what, I knew bands like Oingo Boingo and Fishbone, and these are like.
I saw them. My first bands to ever see live.
Which one?
Fishbone with Beastie Boys. I think they were on their License to Ill tour. That's
right.
my first concert.
And you saw them in Alabama?
In Birmingham. They got banned from Alabama. Could never come back again after that. They put a big dick on the stage.
Yeah, I remember that penis. And my friend found that dick too, dude. It's in storage.
Where you found that dick?
It's in storage. They still have it in storage.
No
and my man
shit.
said, yo. Yeah,
dude, that is a relic, man.
You were there. Listen, I went to that show
sir.
too. That was at the Palladium in Los Angeles. I was at that tour. It was the License to Ill tour. That record changed my life. But way before we get to that, I will say going back and forth, being bi-coastal was a magic trick for me, because then I would come back. So that's why hip hop was such an important part of my life.
Hell
That's how
yeah,
it explains
dude.
how I got into hip hop. So, I grew up on my mother's Motown record collection. She had an incredible love of music and getting to California, my friend's parents' collection looked very different than my mother's record collection. So my mother had everything from the Gap Band to Marvin Gaye, the Supremes, just R&B, blues, some disco. But I would go to my neighbor's house and they would have like Kenny Rogers and Elvis. And it's not that there's not good, but I didn't grow up on those type, April Wine and Nazareth. And that wasn't my lane, So they called me Disco Dan in LA, which was fighting words. You calling me Disco Dan, that's a problem, but it's just me against the world. So, you had to eat that. But as I started, the coming of age thing starts to happen. I realized, man, that my love for hip hop is starting to grow and it's becoming more than just the song. Rapper's Delight was the first hip hop song I ever heard. I think that for most of us, that's our entryway into it. But then it starts to become a thing.
Then Hard Times, Run DMC.
Of course. And so it starts to become a thing. And I start to feel like I know a little bit more than all my friends in the neighborhood, because every summer I'm going back to New York and New Jersey and I'm listening to WBLS and I'm listening to Kiss FM and I'm hearing the New York stations play a little bit of this mixed in with the R&B show. Yeah. And they're like, and then breakdancing starts to happen and I'm starting to see graffiti and I'm starting to see all of the elements that made hip hop so special. I mean, and going back to thinking about Billy Morrison and I just watched the interview that you guys did with him. Yeah. I'm 55. I think he's a little bit older than me. Mm-hmm. And you said something about punk, and it's important to my life because later, in a certain era, it's applicable, and then later I rediscovered it. But I would never call myself, I wasn't a punk guy, like a punk rocker.
You're not like Black Flag, Suicide.
I liked all, so those are yes, but with the exception, and I'll explain. So I was a b-boy from day one. Once hip hop became a real thing, I used to break dance a little bit. I've graffitied a little bit.
The culture, dude.
The culture. Well, culture is that word is interesting because there are other forms of music that don't have a culture surrounded with it. So ska, like what's the ska culture? Like there's a form of dress, there's a unique sound, but that's kind of where
it ends. Yeah, hip
hop it has all of the things that makes it a culture. Art. So the art that was different that hip hop brought was graffiti and the way it brought it. Yeah. The language. If I said fresh to my grandmother, she's either thinking I'm describing bread or that I said something cheeky. You're getting a little fresh, watch your mouth.
Oh, yeah.
A new music form, which was hip hop, which is rhyming over, break beats. An instrument. What's the instrument?
I mean,
turntables, baby.
Right. Yeah. Because they existed, but not in that way. Not the way you could take a break and just extend the break so that you could rhyme over it. And then the dance form, which was pop locking and breakdancing. Mm-hmm. And that hit me over the head. I was right front row seat for hip hop's emerging like on the scene. Like I was that guy as a white guy in suburbia in like Woodland Hills, California, and Canoga Park, California. But I would get to go back every summer and just be on the peripheral, even though it wasn't Manhattan or the Bronx or whatever. But it was closer to the source, and then I would bring that back
bring
home.
it back with you.
And it was just, I was known for knowing all of that shit, you know? And
that's legendary at that age, dude.
it is. And it was a different era. Like I said, it was like going to another planet and coming back with new stuff. And I was always like a year or so ahead of the crowd because I would tell you about things you didn't even think. Like if you tell someone the Hoodoo Gurus or like something, like they think you're speaking or Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. You're like, whoa, what the Jungle Brothers, or you would just weird people. And then a year later, they would hear those records, so it would get. We lived in a very different world back then. It wasn't like the internet where you just one day everybody gets the same message, and we're all on point with that. And so I grew up in hip hop, but I was saying earlier to the engineer and his missus about teen nightclubs, and she was sharing a story with me about those. And we had those in Southern California. We had a lot of them, which were clubs that would cater to teens. They were dance clubs, and they served no alcohol. They had a juice bar, but nobody bought the juice. We were all drinking out in the parking lot. And then
how did those places survive? How did they make money, dude?
Chris Hansen probably knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't that. Maybe it wasn't. It was more of a honey trap than it was a, or like a honey pot.
Yeah.
Right. Thank God that's not in my experience. But the point is that there was a lot of those.
Looking back, you weren't thinking about it.
Thank God they knew better. You know, those chicken hawks didn't look at me and knew it was going to be a problem. But that's real. But it was a great. Like, I mean, I grew up listening to both things, if that makes sense. I'm in Southern California. Richard Blade is the biggest DJ on the radio station. K-Rock becomes this new station in like 81. It switches format to new wave. So we're bringing, we're hearing all the British,
invasion,
stuff. The second invasion, right? Since the Beatles.
Yep.
And then local stuff, like I said, like Oingo Boingo and Fishbone. And that's just like, this is my lane. And then hip hop starting to happen. But by the time, I was already like all in, but by the time the Beastie Boys came in like 86, it was like, I'm like 100%. If I was wobbling. So the first punk record I bought, I didn't like English punk whatsoever.
Yeah.
But Suicidal Tendencies was the first record I bought.
You couldn't be a skater and not listen to Suicidal
Tendencies. For me, it wasn't about the skating thing. It was about the style of things. So by the time I get, I'm just like every other guy in school up until 10th grade. But in 10th grade, something happens. I still don't know what it is. I grew a little taller. My confidence just kind of was different. And then I just became this other guy. And Suicidal Tendencies was kind of the look that a lot of the guys that I was running with, and including myself, adopted. And a lot of these kids were like white boys who dressed like cholos.
Yeah, I was going to say with the headband.
Yeah, or just in, slicking your hair back with three flowers and flannels. Yeah. It was that skate / surf. Like a lot of it was a tough white boy look at the time. That's real.
Yeah.
And a lot of other kids that were coming out of juvenile hall and group homes and were California Youth Authority, which is like junior prison. When they came out, they spoke with a little Spanglish thing.
Yes, sir.
A little beach, but a little bit, what's up, Holmes? And like all of these words, what's up, homeboy? And you didn't hear white guys talking like that. You didn't see that shit. So I was one of those dudes, and I was in a punk gang. So there were punk gangs in Southern California, and they became a big thing. And that's
Mickey
a lot
Mouse.
of it. Yeah, how you know about that? Someone told you about that? Or you looked it up on the internet?
No, I've done my research on it.
Yeah, well, that's a real thing, and it don't sound like nothing, but it was something. I promise you that.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's very deceiving.
Yeah, well, it is. And it was called Mickey Mouse Club, and it was a bunch of dudes that were from other gangs, and some of them were in both two gangs at one time, and
but they weren't fucking around. I'll tell you that.
Well, we weren't fucking around, and literally, I try to tell my girl Holly has 2 great kids, and her kids about the age where I was caught my first real case for attempted murder at 17. So I'm like, my life looked very different at 17 than the kids that I see now's life look. And it didn't seem odd to me at 17 that I caught the case. I thought I was going to catch one a lot sooner than that.
You were trying to.
Well,
for street cred.
Maybe. No, not for street cred, but and that's a whole other avenue. But my father was in that life. And when I was 2 months old, went to prison, and, you know, I'd hear war stories about him or really bad stories about him. But my mother always said, you're going to be just like your father. You'd be dead or in prison by the time you're 21. So you hear that enough and you're like, all right, I can run with that. Fuck it. You know what? I'll show you. Yeah, just like it, I show you. So I ran, and it, you know, ties into the Outsiders and all the stuff, you know, I'll tell you about. But I felt disenchanted. I was a latchkey kid. I felt like an outsider because I'm a New York kid and who was living in Southern California. And it was just a lot. I didn't have the, you know,
he didn't know how cool he was.
No father at home. You know what I mean? A mother who couldn't be bothered. And I'm just like, so what do you do when you, in that situation, you go out in the streets and you find other dudes, those other people who are going through that experience are the ones that you're going to click with the most. Yeah. And that looks like the form of gangs. And if you wanted to go, which I did, to a lot of punk gigs back then, or even not punk gigs, a lot of these clubs, you know, like you would go in there, and if you look like I did, there you were going to get hit up by either cholos on the way out or punk dudes in the way in that were gangbanging or were clicked up. So Suicidal Tendencies is more than a band.
Oh, yeah.
You understand that, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was a big gang. And anytime they showed up at a spot, it was problematic for anybody, you know? And I never had problems with them, but your heart would skip a beat when you see all these dudes coming in, bandanaed up, looking in the thing for somebody. You're just like, oh God, please not me. Yeah. And so when we went, we would go clicked up as well. And there was strength in numbers for us in that way. And then you'd run into all the other gangs, the Lads and FFF and Mickey Mouse Club and Circle One, the Family, and BPO, Burbank Punk Organ. There was a lot of those. There was a lot. And there's a book in there somewhere, a movie in there somewhere, because a lot of you dudes, there's a lot in there. There's actually, so there is a movie, and now I'm thinking out loud, there's a movie that Ad Rock starred in called Lost Angels. And Lost Angels, mostly nobody knows what this movie is. It was in '89, I think, that it came out. And it was taken from a story from the Rolling Stone magazine called Suburban Valley Youth Gangs or something like that, where they talk about MMC and FFF.
Oh,
and this young, good-looking kid got murdered from FFF, which is pretty much one of the toughest punk gangs of all time.
Right.
And nothing but respect for most of those dudes in that way. But
did they operate like
murdered in a nightclub in one of these teen clubs called Hot Tracks, and it made national news, and it kind of brought the light, and everybody, all of a sudden, all of us started having problems, and because the cops started to look, there you go, Los Angeles. And so when I saw this movie on the screen the first time, my heart skipped a beat because I go, bro, this is our life on the screen. How is this possible? It felt like one of those this is a coincidence that this is basically like the life we're living. Then come to find out that the story was taken from that article, that the guy who wrote this thing wrote it based on that 6-page expose. If you look for Boy George in 1986 on the cover of Rolling Stone, and you can pull that up and put it on the screen, you will see that little clipping. It says Suburban Youth Gangs. That whole 6 to 8 page article.
Made it a notch.
And that was talking about us. So before House of Pain, I try to tell people who know when they grew up with me, they know. Not that one. That's not 86. That one is suspect, bro. That one, Billy's in. There you go. Valley Boys, California Suburban Youth Gangs. Wow. So that story was a big story. And that story, this kid, Mark Miller, who lost his life, it made not only local news heavy, it made national news, and it made the cops come down on all of us. I mean, they were coming.
Were there turf wars like in those games?
It was just like anything where you'd run with a group of people and you'd be on the other side of town and you go to party, and then there's 15 dudes in the backyard looking to take your head off. And then a lot of dudes got, it was just, it wasn't turf at all. It was just suburban, it was like.
They just created beefs to have beefs?
No, I mean, if you're not from our part of town, you come hitting on our girls, it's a problem. If I go to a club in Long Beach to see a show and there's some dudes in there from Long Beach from a gang, you're like, where are you from, homie? Like, it was just trying to get by, and you just weren't. Bro, we live in a very different era. I mean, think of the movie.
Oh, I know, but I grew up, You
grew up out here. Yeah, so it's different. Yeah. I mean, I look at the classic, The Warriors, that movie of 1978. Do you know the classic, and with all the gangs? Their whole premise of that movie is that they go to a big gang meeting in the Bronx and somebody shoots the gang leader and they blame it on the Warriors, and their whole mission is to get back to Coney Island, New York. Today, you just call Uber and would be home and no problem. Right, but back then, every time you got off the train in a neighborhood you didn't belong in, you could get got.
Right.
You just didn't do it. It's just like people like.
And how did each gang identify themselves? Was it bandanas?
Yeah,
or you just knew?
I mean, you just knew somewhere else. Where were they from? You'd ask them, and if you were real, you better tell them where you're from. And so again, it was a season. It was like it spent me. It was only about 5 years of my life, but it was those years that everybody knew. So prior to House of Pain, you knew me. Regardless, whether you liked that or you didn't like that, there are people who loved me and there are people who hated me. I'll never forget, there was a guy who was tall as me. I'm 6'6". And I seen him one day and he was like, man, he was all sour. And I was like, what happened? He go, what's the matter? He's like, bro, I went all the way to Santa Monica. I took the bus out there, which is, it's like a half a day ride on a public bus. And he played like one of those, carnival games that they have at the boardwalks. And he won his girl this 5 foot Pink Panther, right? Yeah. And he's all happy, and he gets the bus all the way, the beach bus back all the way to the San Fernando Valley. And right when he gets off at the bus stop, a car pulls up. It goes, what's up, Danny boy? And they jump out and they beat him up. And they thought he was me, and they rip his stuffed animal up and kick him to the curb. So he was pissed. And I'm like, bro, I'm pissed that you didn't win the fight. How many dudes was it?
Yeah.
And he's mad because it's so people knew who I was, or I was it was, yeah.
They knew.
How do you end up running into DJ Lethal?
Okay. So that whole thing ends. High school ends. I never make it through high school. I made it till 9th grade. They pushed me to high school. I hung out for 3 years. I stole a lot because of, they talk about equality. I didn't have equal shit either. I come from a middle-class background at best, and I'm going to school that has a lot of rich kids where they're getting a car guaranteed at 16, and usually it's a cabriolet convertible Rabbit at the time, which would have been the car of choice for preppies. And they're just getting, or 3 Series BMWs and all of that shit. My mom's like, get a job. So I didn't want to get a job, didn't know what I was doing. So I stole a lot. I sold drugs. None of this I'm proud of, but this is just what it is. And, I'm just kind of sputtering along and just, and what she told me, the mantra was, you're going to be just like your father, dead or in prison, was starting to become true because I was drinking now around the clock, or as much as, if I'm out, I'm drinking. If I wasn't per se day drinking, but maybe if you had some, I mean, but it's in that, but it's still, I'm not paying the price for this yet. Yeah. But as it's about to start to come home to roost, I started to go, man, I'd like to make a band. I worked at a record store for about 2.5 years. It was a chain place called The Warehouse.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
And one day by accident, well, no, you know what? We're going back to Quince's. One day I was sitting at the front counter, which sucked. It's like, it's a record store job. So it doesn't suck.
I've had them, dude.
But I have to wear an apron, which they call a smock, and have my name thing on it. And I'm ringing up customers. And the guy comes out the back all frustrated. And he goes, you. And I'm like, no. And he's like, you, come here in the back. I'm like, uh-oh. And he's like, this guy just quit. He goes, you ever been back here product managing? And I'm like, no. He goes, well, shit, take off that stupid schmuck or you're going to help me. And next thing I know, I was doing the job of a product manager. Now, they never paid me more for that gig, but what that meant was now I'm in a back room like this. I don't have to wear the silly apron anymore. We can listen to anything we want back here. We didn't have to listen to the playlist out on the floor. And all we would do, the truck would come on every Monday. We would unload that truck. And then throughout the week, we would sort the stuff. If it was R&B, if it was rock, if it was pop, and then we would price it, and then we'd put it in these cubicles. And if you worked on the floor, you'd come in when you didn't have anything busy, and you'd put it out in the category it belongs. So it changes everything for me. And what it does is allows me we could promo anything we wanted. So this is, again, for kids out there listening, there was no fucking internet. You just couldn't pull up anything that you thought of at the whim and just be like, oh, here it is. I got it right here. So I didn't know. So for instance, pre-House of Pain, I start to discover like that I'm Irish, and I'm like, okay. And I discovered that because for a whole other thing, and I'll tell you why, but I see a band called Celtic Frost, and you may be familiar, or you may not be. I know. But I opened that record thinking it was some Irish music, or some like, no, it's not. It's like really hard. Like, But I had the ability to do that and not have to pay for it. So that's like the internet. Imagine if you're the only guy, or you and a handful of people have access to this thing, and nobody out on the floor does, and nobody in your friends do. So unless
now he's cool again. Now he's flexing again.
If you had to buy that. Maybe you'd be lucky to go in a record store that had like an open turntable where you could listen to like a used record, so for the most part, my music and movie IQ starts to go through the roof because now I'm able to, I'm talking 88, 89, 90.
Right.
to keep that in perspective, we didn't have a hip hop category. So record might end up most likely would end up in R&B.
Mm-hmm.
If you were Fishbone, you're in R&B.
Wow.
If you were 24/7 Spies, which was like a New York version of like, it was a black punk band, they had to put a sticker, do not file this under rock, basically. They were like Living Color. Remember Living Color?
Yeah,
man?
absolutely.
It was that style of thing. 24/7 Spies was like the OG of OGs of that. But they had to specifically put a sticker saying, do not miscategorize us. So you'd find some of the stuff in world music, like where Zemfir, the man of the pan flute, or Yanni would be like, dude, what the fuck? Like that's where reggae went because we didn't have a reggae section.
Yeah,
this is corporate USA. Like nobody, there was this rock.
Top 40 stations used to play everything, dude.
Well,
everything.
So it was a different time, but I was able to take any record off the floor, open it, CD at this point, and put it on our back. And I started to listen to things that I always wanted to listen to that I didn't want to buy, things I was scared to ask what it was, Celtic Frost, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I started to learn a lot about, just all of the things. And this is before it was socially acceptable to listen to everything. We lived in a very different world back then. And the status quo was like stadium rock type dudes. We call those dudes heshers, and they were everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you were punk rock or hip hop or new wave looking, you'd get stomped out at the mall or at the foot, whatever. They were looking for you. They're looking for you. So if you stood out, if you look like a nail, you're getting hammered.
Right.
And so that's kind of why we all kind of ran together and be like, dare you to hammer us, try hammering us, see how that works for you.
Yeah.
And that's why dudes started getting, gunplay started getting involved and people started getting poked because I dare you. You may be the wrestling dude. You may be that football dude. Step to it. I wish you would. So they started to realize that there's pushback for this. And the world changes in my eyes when Lollapalooza hits.
God,
when
I went to that
Lollapalooza
too.
hits,
Shit.
me too. But I watched it unfold in front of my eyes where Ice-T is out there with Susie and the Banshees.
Perry Farrell.
Perry's out there with Janes and he's embracing, Perry and Ice-T did a song together in that era. And you're starting to see all of the cultures, all the different genres coming together and saying, dude, this is what we do. Living Color was on that bill.
So on the
Lollapalooza, I believe so. Yeah, we can look it up. But there was this whole the wall started to disintegrate,
come down.
Yeah, you couldn't dude. There was no kids wearing Ramones shirts with faux hawks at 3 years old at them. That's we see that nowadays. There's no. But for me, it was a badge of honor. If you were down with something, you had to represent it, and you knew that you've been through some shit to be able to call yourself that because people will give you problems, and I never ran from those problems, to be honest with you. And I'm not trying to be like a tough guy. That's why people knew who I was. I wasn't having any of that shit. But there are a lot of dudes. I mean, there's a kid in my neighborhood back then. His name is Bob Raft. And his older brother was into punk. We got stabbed at a minor threat show in our area.
Yeah.
And he was punk rock because of his brother. Not because of his brother, but he was like one of the first dudes to really be fully that. And I used to watch people try to, it was problematic, man. Almost like, why bother at this point? But he went, so you really had to pay a price back then for any of those.
For anything you liked.
Separating from the pack could cost you a lot.
Right.
And God bless, because it strengthened, your ability to be authentic. But back then you did not want to be. But so it's a different world we live in now. Now anybody can be anything. You see Kim Kardashian wearing, Slayer shirts.
Right. Yeah.
As fashion statements, not as,
Right. You remember, Anthrax.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Anthrax did all that. And I'm a metalhead.
Okay.
So I was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
That
and Anthrax is cool.
Yeah.
Scott Ian, if you read his book, you'll see a little story where he replaced me for 3 days. He did 3 shows as Danny Boy, but as filling in for me, I jumped off, I stage dove on our own show in Boston. And when they pulled me back up out of the crowd, they put me between 2 monitors, the wedges, and I twisted my ankle, man, and it blew up like a football. So they sent me home. So Scott Ian said, yeah, I'll fill in for him. And he said, after the 3rd show, he's like, fuck this. I'm out. That's too much. Yeah. But, that's a nice honor to have, Scott Ian, fill in for you when you're gone. But again, I look back at all this, man, as like a movie I once saw too. It doesn't even feel like my life. Not that my life is so good that it doesn't, but it's just like, it's been so long since all of that was like pertinent and like, I'm so I have to really stay like intentional on just staying in the moment nowadays.
For sure, dude.
Than to be stuck in the past or be obsessing over the future. It's
too much to take on, dude.
for a guy like me.
For a one day at a time guy, it is
for a sober guy, you're onto
Mm-hmm.
it. And even with 19 years of that, one day at a time, it is still something I have to be conscientious about because it's a truism that I've heard many times. But yesterday's history and tomorrow's a mystery, and today is all we have. And I don't want to miss the beauty of today because I'm too busy thinking about the past or the future.
Yeah.
So I stay here. But when I reminisce over this stuff, usually on podcast, I'm like, damn, it's crazy. And now I have, I'm here. Me and my girl came out here, Holly, and she has 3 kids total, but 2 of them are her kids in the sense one's by marriage, her ex-husband. But these kids are so well behaved, and so I'm just like, this is too good. Like these kids are. We just were.
You
so
marvel
different.
at it. You're like,
oh yeah, that's the word. I can't.
was
believe
a degenerate when I was a kid.
Oh my
dude.
God! And you know what? I thought I was a good kid who got a bad rap because of the way I looked. Because some of my rich friends that passed the smell test, if you looked at them, you're like, they were robbing their parents.
Test.
Yeah, they were robbing their parents blind, stealing their cars, crashing the cars, pawning their jewelry. I'm like, dude, you guys are the worst.
Right.
And nobody ever and I was like, if I took my mother's car, she would kill me first and foremost.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't even fathom doing anything to inner. I did it to you.
Yeah.
Your mom might lose her car, but my mom was not.
They were stealing from their family.
Yes, and that's the first victims is the closest to them. And their medicine cabinets were raided, their jewelry boxes were raided. And how do I know? Because I knew a lot of rich kids at that era, and they were stealing from their thing like it was no problem. I knew better to ever do that. I might have stolen a few dollars when I was younger out of my mother's purse, but nothing serious than other than that, because I knew that it was always put in my head, and even if it was just suggesting or that we were always 1 month away from the whole rug being pulled from under. So I would never jeopardize my mother getting to work by stealing her car at night and going joyriding. I just would never do that.
Did you know this, Terry, that their fucking DJ in House of Pain is now in Limp Bizkit?
He's been in it.
Yeah, I never knew that until today.
You asked about him, so I want to give you an answer. So he came with the deal. So after I'm at the record store, I fall into this a friend of mine figures out this way to reprogram the back of credit cards, and it becomes a thing. And I'm full-time doing this, and I still at that time I had hair. And I could part it to the side and put on a nice sweater and double as Eddie Haskell. And that's a reference to older folks, but it's the kid that looks like he's all right, but he's always up to something.
Yeah, that's right.
Leave it to Beaver style. And I would go in and I would buy all kinds of luxury items, and then I would return those for credit slips, and then we could resell those credit slips for 50% off, so we had a whole bartering system, but we did a lot of crime. And it was in that I ran into Everlast, who we went to high school together. I went to 5 different high schools in my area. I was always
hopping around.
Yeah, because I wasn't really going to go, so they would keep kicking me out, and then I had to re-register in another one, and to keep from going to juvenile hall because I had caught a case at 17. I caught one actually at 16 and went to juvenile hall. Then the second one for that attempted murder thing. So I was on probation since I'm 16 years old. Wow, and there are conditions to that probation. And one of them is if you don't have a job full-time, not part-time, you'd have to go to school full-time. And so I would stop going. They would put me back in juvenile hall as a reminder for the weekend that this is real. And I'd go, no, I'll never do that again. And then I would get a job and I'd go, this job sucks. So I'd quit. And then it wasn't until the next hearing that I'd have. So I was doing all kinds of stuff. But it was in that part, in that part of my life where I ran into Everlast. I knew he had a record out. I was a fan of his first record. Although, looking back, I knew that there was, if I was next to him, I would have suggested, because he'd made a really good record with Ice-T. It was his first solo record. And the record came out and it just didn't do anything. It was, for me, I thought, what an incredible, to be signed as a white kid from the Valley to Ice-T and be in Rhyme Syndicate. Like,
the planets have to line up for that shit.
Bro, so it was super impressive. But I ran into him and he was going through it at home because, he'd spent, it was like a false start. You know what I mean? We got this guy who's going to be the biggest thing in the world and it didn't happen. So now he's getting kicked out of his house. I'm doing credit card scams, selling a little bit of drugs. So I'm looking like a kingpin and I'm not, my house looks like, we lived in my cousin's apartment. His condo, but it looked like the Grinch's sled in there, bro. I mean, we had stacked to the wall with all types of ill-gotten goods. So I told him, hey, man, don't worry about your mom throwing you out. I'm going to pick you up. You're going to come live with us. He came in. It was like, what's up? We were clothing him and giving him a scooter and giving him credit cards of his own. We were getting after it.
Dude, that's
and it was in
amazing.
him looking in my music collection because I was at the record store so long. I had liberated so many records in 3 years from that store. I should be in prison. And
that's what I got fired from my job for.
Yeah, I'm saying, well, listen, I was giving them away to myself, but they were stacked to the wall. And if you remember back then, somebody would borrow a tape or you'd be out in somebody's car and you'd put in the tape and then you'd lose the jewel case.
Yeah.
Well, that was a pet peeve of mine. So I would re-jewel case everything. And if I didn't have the original one, I would go to Kinko's and I'd make my own little jewel case labels. And one
OCD
of them,
shit there, dude.
And creative OCD, yeah. So one of them was called House of Pain. And I got the name from an Oingo Boingo song called No Spill Blood. And it was like just bullshit we were doing. We had like a 4-track recorder at one point. And I was like, that's my band name. And it was not even real. So when Erik came to move in with us, he was looking through my stuff. He's like, bro, where did you get all my, don't worry about that. And he's like, what's House of Pain? The first thing he said was, what's House of Pain? I was like, it's my band. He's like, what? I was like, yeah, I'll get down a little something, something too, So in his head, he was like, that's a cool thing. We need to do that. And I'm like, okay. So it came
just
out of nowhere.
Name alone, he loved it.
On name alone.
Wow.
And then at the time, so this is where it gets a little, it doesn't get tricky, but it may be controversial.
Yeah.
And I don't talk about it a lot, but I will. And I have no problem telling my truth. And it is what it is. But I was into hip hop since I can remember, since Sugar Hill Gang, maybe not 100%, but it was always like, since its inception.
On your radar,
I've been into it, but I was fully like, and I felt a part of it, and I felt I was championing that. And I was, it's not a feeling, it's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And then Public Enemy comes out, and I love Public Enemy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of my favorite groups to this time, of all times. But then a lot of other groups come out like that, and this black militant stuff starts to happen in hip hop. And then this 5%er stuff, which is a sect of Islam, but it's a prison religion, to my knowledge. I don't want to offend anybody, and it's not at anybody. But all of a sudden, I start to hear Farrakhan's a prophet, and I think you ought to listen to what he could say to you. What you ought to do is follow for now. Hell what the people say. If you know Public Enemy, you know that line. So I'm starting to go, yo, let me see what Farrakhan's talking about, right? And the first thing I start to see is like, white man's the devil and this, that, and the third. I'm like, whoa. I'm a white man. Like I'm in here. I'm in the trenches with the brothers, like at the spot. Like what did I do? The gang I was in was called the Two-Tone Gang, like mod stuff. Like two-tone is like blacks and whites getting. We had a few black dudes. We had a few brothers in the clique, and we had a handful of Mexicans. We were a patchwork quilt, if you would. We were just kids from our neighborhood who liked the same shit, and we got down. So we didn't care about skin color. We actually, to the opposite. Other white boys were calling us wannabe whatevers because we hung out with so many diverse people. But when I start to hear my favorite bands championing the dude that's telling me that I'm the devil and responsible for all the ills in the world, I'm like, fuck that shit. And it starts to become a prominent force in hip hop. Big Daddy Kane was a 5%er, Poor Righteous Teachers, X-Clan, all of these. And I'm like, I like all this shit, but I'm the bad guy. Like, I ain't done shit. Yeah. So I went to my mother. I was like, yo, I didn't know what to say. I was like, did we ever have racists in our family? And we have slaves? She's like, dummy, your fucking family came over from fucking Ireland 50 years ago. Now 75, 80 years ago. She's like, fuck no. She's like, you guys left my ancestors left Ireland because of the oppression, between Catholic and Protestant. And so I was like, fuck that. I'm not leaving hip hop because people are making me feel unwelcome.
Because
because I'm the fucking devil. But I'm also not going to fucking just say I'm a B-boy. I'm going to say I'm an Irish American who's into fucking, like, that was my pride thing. Like, I'm going to be proud too. You got black medallions, I'm going to be Irish pride. So it was like, all right, fuck it. And I think it's still a healthy thing. Like, I'm not mad because someone's saying like, black power. I see that shit, but I'm not saying white power. I'm just saying I'm proud to be Irish, and that's a differentiation between being white. Because what is white? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm not responsible.
It's less and less every day, dude.
Right, and I'm not responsible for that shit. And it hurt me at the time. So I'm like, I hang around with fucking hard rock fucking Irish kids. This is our thing. So when Erik seen that shit, he was at a time where he was like, yo, it was just him against the world. In hip hop.
Yeah.
Now he sees me. We got a gang behind us. I'm a style guy. So I'm a creative director kind of guy. I do logos. I do all the background shit. You know what I mean? I do all the shit that I like better.
Shit, yeah.
I understand the value of like the graphics on a record because I worked at a record store as a product manager for 3 years. I understand
what catches people's
where
eyes.
you put it on the end cap and why it would stand out to you. I understand the marketing and the branding of it to a fault. So much so that I let everything go by the wayside. I could rhyme at a little time when most white kids couldn't, but nowhere near Everlast's skill. I mean, that kid still is one of my favorites, even though, we've had an up and down relationship throughout the years as brothers do.
Of course.
But I will never, listen, I started off as a fan. I'll always be a fan of his skill set.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
I just don't want you to beat me over the fucking head with it.
Right,
Don't rob me, rob with me. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? But so I start to backdoor myself into hip hop because now I got a brand and I got a band name. I start doing logos for us. And I start to be like, I'll be the hype man. You spit, I'll do the Chuck D. You do the Chuck D, I'll do the Flavor Flav to the side, and we'll do. And so Lethal came with him. Lethal was his DJ.
Oh, okay.
And God bless him, is Leor Dimant. He's in Limp Bizkit. We met Limp Bizkit on the road as House of Pain was coming to an end. We met them in Florida, I think at Fort Lauderdale. And it was a young Fred Durst who was like, loved House of Pain and loved hip hop, was trying to eat hungry. And they could see that we were struggling as a band and it looked like the end was near. And they said, hey, Lethal, I know that you're in one band, but why don't you join ours or help produce? So he started producing their first stuff and then the rest is history. And so he's been in Limp Bizkit since you knew of him. He wasn't before you didn't know of him, but their first record, $3 bill, was that it? Yeah. He was there, and he was a strong part of why you would like that as well.
And that's what Cypress Hill's DJ did with y'all, right? He produce
Muggs.
Muggs did.
So Everlast and Muggs knew each other from the Rhyme Syndicate because Rhyme Syndicate also, I think, had signed 7A3, which is a group. Two brothers, Brett and something else.
Y'all went with Tommy Boy,
Muggs,
right?
Yeah, Muggs was the DJ. So when we saw Cypress, we ran into him. We ran into Be Real and Muggs at a club, and they just had some next level shit. And it was like they were bringing back that boom bap shit that we loved and had been long since relevant. Because, at the time, thinking like 89, 90, it was like a lot of polished MTV rap shit. It was Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch and Redhead Kingpin and Kwame and just shit that is like
Ed Lover and Dr. Dre.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it was watered down. And here comes Cypress, man. You don't even see their faces on the album cover. It's mysterious. They're
the suicidal tendencies.
Yeah,
of
no doubt. And they're fans of that too. And they're friends with that. That's absolutely right. And they're talking crazy shit, fucking how I could just kill him. So we start to go, this is apropos for everything we're talking about, because House of Pain for us was like, it was a commitment to just talk about us and what we do. And what we did wasn't the same experiences that, you would hear from Big Daddy Kane or somebody else. And a lot of groups, whether it was Third Base or whatever, kind of just try to be like, we're like that too, right? We're just white. And then, and my perception of that, it's no disrespect. I'm just saying, like they looked like they were trying to assimilate to it. And we were like, fucking, we'll buck it. Like what kind of group is called House of Pain in hip hop anyway? Like the name doesn't even sound like a hip hop name. It's usually like some real flashy, and then Cypress Hill sounds like a fucking orange juice company. If you don't know better, like Cypress Hill. No offense, I'm just saying. Like if you didn't know,
I've never thought
in
about
90,
that.
in 91, 92, if I said to any John Q. Public, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of House of Pain? They're not thinking a hip hop group from San Fernando Valley who's all transplanted from New York. You're thinking, I don't know, the only thing people thought of back then was the Houston Oilers. That was what they called the stadium, the House of Pain. But there was no you just couldn't imagine that would be a hip hop group, nor would you Cypress Hill. It just sounds like, to
Actually,
me,
it sounds hard, like metal almost.
Yeah.
To me, it does.
House of Pain. Yeah, you would think of a metal band.
Cool.
So we were trying to do the anti-establishment, anti-whatever. And at that point, to do some like hard rock shit was not what was being played on the radios. It was not what was selling a ton of records. It was just too many other. Hammer was like the biggest star in the world. And Vanilla Ice had just come off of his, 91, Ice Ice Baby. They were not looking for bald, skinhead white boys with, fedoras and prison look. We just hit them from surprise. They didn't expect us or Cypress, and it completely caught fire, and hip hop came back to, it was the second, or the third wave of that. Cause in '89, man, I started to, even as a B-boy, start to go, is it over? A lot of the groups that I liked were like not making records anymore. Run DMC's last record prior to, it was like, oh, it sounds a little dated. I don't like, and De La had, was like the only one that I was still, there just wasn't, the MTV Raps was over, the 80s were over. We don't know the fate, at this point. And then we reestablished it with Cypress. House of Pain had blown up so big. And, our first tour, we went out with the Beastie Boys, which was saying something, that they bring another white hip hop group. We also got kicked off that tour. We were so aggressive.
No shit.
Yo,
on the Beastie Boys tour?
Yeah, they fired us because we were trying to license to Ill so bad. And plus.
Right. And
plus. I mean, I bought my first AK-47 on the road on that tour. I was whipping it out the tour bus windows. They were not liking the shit we were on. We were on some real cutty shit. And they were
How many dates into the tour were you get kicked out?
6, 7. It was barely. And then jump around.
And no altercations with them. They're just like, y'all too fucking.
Everlast fucking, I think he threw their tour manager off our bus was the final stroke. But
and they capture production at shows as everybody does. Y'all probably didn't respond to that well. One light show, guys. One light show.
We were blowing up so big with Jump Around. That thing was a force. I mean, it's still a force to be reckoned with 32 years later. And you can imagine when it first came out.
It was hitting, dude.
And we were the opening act, and they were cutting our set times lower and lower, and then they were putting us on while the doors were still open. So, for instance, we played the Irvine Amphitheater. We played the Irvine Amphitheater to a sold-out crowd, and my mother was still trying to get through the ticket gate when they were like, "You need to go on stage," and we were like, "Hells no, we're not even like it's you." Our stage call would be 8 p.m. They try to put us on at like 7:15, and we're like, "Nah, fuck that." So, it was heartbreaking because I mean I was the number one Beastie Boy fan, and then to get fired from that, I thought it was over. I thought we just ruined our whole career. The Beastie Boys fired us. We were done. And we only went on to sell out every date with the Soul Assassins tour with us, Cypress Hill, Funk Dubious, Hooligans. And we crushed the US and Europe with that tour, and it was just nonstop, sold out plus shows, added shows, all of that. So what I thought was the death of House of Pain just was becoming, its full potential. But unfortunately, as they say, as success comes in and money comes in, things started to change. And,
complicates the shit. More money, more problems. Dude.
And we started. Me and Everlast for sure started to pull in different directions. And I'm part of. I'm 50% of any problem that I've ever experienced, if not more.
Sure.
But I was trying to stay true to the core fan, which had bought into us for a certain thing, and he discovers Islam himself and converts to Islam and starts to, I feel he was more influenced at this point by Tupac and that kind of, that kind of, and I was more pulling towards, the suicidal tendency, that alternative type, at the time I'm listening
shit happens, dude.
Right. And it's just like,
it's nobody's fault sometimes.
When we first put it together, it was like I said, we were both interested in each other's dossier, if you will, and putting those two sauces together. But once it was a massive hit, it was like, I got this from here, buddy. Just get in the back seat. And I was like, whoa. But by the third, and we only made 3 records, which is not terrible. But by the third, I had very little to do with any of this. I wasn't asked for any participation. I was like, fuck it anyway. I'm losing the will to want to do this. And it was,
dude.
It was the trappings that I was more accustomed, was like, used to, and liking the fact that, all of a sudden I have like a few nice, luxury cars and some good jewelry. And I just bought a $1 million house, and that, how will I keep these things going without a band? And there was no keeping going. And so 3 years, 6.5 years, which is crazy. As I'm 55, look back, House of Pain, and they're still talking about it.
This month,
I mean, you're taking like a spoonful and you're like, this is how I define you. and it's House of Pain. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it, because that's what we know, and the song, still continues on. But that's just such a small, and I didn't even believe that until I looked at it for what it was. I'm like, dude, it's literally,
snapshot in time, dude.
Yeah, dude. And God bless, it's always, I've accepted that it's always going to be part of my story. How could it not be?
Yeah.
And I don't dislike talking about it. I was going to say I love, but I love telling my story, but it is a big part of my story. And it's paid a lot of dividends, but there was a lot of times where I wish it wasn't my story. And I wish, because it was also very painful. And after it all came crashing down, I had already had a healthy appetite for drinking. But then I introduced drugs to the mix because the drinking wasn't making those feelings go away. And the more I did that, the more I just kept digging myself a hole. And can you imagine coming out of a group where, in my mind, I felt most people were like, he's most likely to succeed. We've already seen Everlast solo, and that don't work. And Lethal's cool, and now he's Limp Bizkit, but nobody thought Limp Bizkit was going to blow. Or maybe they did, but I didn't look at it either way. I just did, he's in some band that is doing like rock rap, and that's a tough sell. And I'm like, okay, what can I recreate now and start a new one, And it turns out Everlast has a massive hit with What It's Like, and his record sells, through the roof, and he gets a Grammy he wins a Grammy with Carlos Santana, and he's just like the man of the hour. His song's in heavy rotation, and then Limp Bizkit blows the fuck up, and I'm like, wow, talk about wanting to feel like you ain't shit, and now we're just the universe to remind you, not only are you not shit, we're gonna throw it in your face that both of the dudes from your band, even the DJ, is popping. And I was like, oh my God, I really must be fucking garbage. And
but it's a fucking test.
Sure.
How are you going to get up from there?
Right, I know. But at the time, I don't want to hear anything about that. No,
I get it.
I start to put all my shit in storage. I foreclose on the house. The cars are getting, towed away.
It's that old man wisdom, though, dude. It comes eventually.
Listen, I wouldn't change a thing now.
Right.
But going through that part was so tough. And I just retreated to drugs and alcohol to just make it go away. I just buried my head in the sand and just didn't do anything. So it was a 4 or 5 years of a downward spiral. And year 2000, I get sober, and first year goes great. I do everything I'm asked to do, and I participate in my recovery fully. And I think this is the greatest thing ever. And year 2, I am gainfully employed. I'm making a solo record, and I got $500,000 advance and a quarter.
They don't give those out anymore, dude.
I know.
That sounds like you're from a different planet.
I spent most of it on sneakers, and I'm not kidding when I tell you I spent $280,000 on sneakers. That's true. And then, I'm signed to The Firm, which The Firm was a management group that managed Korn, Limp Bizkit, Britney, whatever, all of the bands, like all of the things, Pamela Anderson, Ice Cube, blah, 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 blah. And they also then want to make a label, and they let their bands be the A&Rs. And they said, this new group that Danny's doing, the X Supermodels, is the one. So I get signed, but I'm the third in the line up coming out. The first one was this former group called Human Waste Project. She was actually incredible, but the record was just out there, and I don't think it did well. Then the second record was one of the Backstreet Boys. They also managed Backstreet Boys. His girlfriend sang, and they put her record out. They paid millions for this thing, and it just dumped. And mine was next up, and they're like, okay, we quit. And they were hoping that BMG or a bigger company would buy out their label. Yeah. And that's when I realized how business is done, most people are trying to build it and sell it. They're not like, this is the rest of my life.
Right.
But in my life, I'm like, I do this, and this is the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. So my record got shelved as well as all the records behind me indefinitely. And I blew through all the advances and all the publishing money, because I'm trying to keep up with all these dudes that are getting, platinum plaques and whatnot. But my money's just coming in. My money was a lump sum, and then there's none coming in the pipipeline anymore because there's no music out, there's no tours, there's no merch.
No points on records, no matter
nothing, right? So the record, they basically give me my record back, but at this point, it felt dated because 2 years had elapsed. I blew through my money. All that to say, at 3 years and a half of sobriety, I go, fuck this. I should be able to drink. I'm Irish. I shouldn't have to come this far to be let down like this. Because I'm like, dude, I'm sober. Why am I experiencing pain? I'm like, I thought just by being sober, my life was going to be perfect.
It was going to absolve it.
All right. Yeah. And all sobriety promises is a chance at a good life, but life still lives. Life lives, man. Like what the, So my expectations were up here, which means my serenity was down there. And I end up choosing to go out and have a drink. And I want to tell you that worked successfully for about 72 hours, and I was right back on methamphetamines, and it was a 3-year downward
72
spiral.
hours?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it lasted that long without.
Fuck, dude.
Well, because what I realized that the relief I was looking for was not to be found at the bottom of a Corona, but it was in a bag of meth. And we were talking on the way up in here, Terry and me. It's they become mutually exclusive at a certain point where you can't do one without the other. And I started. The drinking was the least of my, I wanted to get high in that way that feels. Shit. So for 3 years, I was literally taking penitentiary chances to feed my addiction. And I looked like a skeleton, and everybody basically who had any hope in me had walked away a long time ago. And I ended up in a warehouse. It was a real warehouse, but meaning it wasn't like an abandoned warehouse, but I was living on a couch in a warehouse. It had running plumbing, but it had a toilet and a sink, and that was it. And I probably was there for about 4 or 5 months at my lowest, and all my stuff was in boxes, what little I had. And the only thing that I had kept out of all of that stuff was this 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner. And I went up on Sunset, and I knew that my tags were out, so I borrowed my ex-girlfriend's car, and I parked. And the sign said, if you park here and you're not shopping in this center up on Sunset, we will tow your car. And I thought, nah, they're not going to tow it. Come back a couple hours later, my car is gone. The guy goes, dude, I saw you. I said, you saw me? He said, you had the Plymouth Roadrunner. I love that car. He goes, it broke my heart to do it. But I watched you go across the street and get in another car and take off. So we towed it. I'm like, so I called up, and one, I didn't have the $280 to get it out. And two, there was close to a half an ounce of something in that car that I realized that they were probably fine. So if I go pick up that car, I'll probably go to jail as well. So I left that car. So that was it. I had a warrant for my arrest. Teeth were falling out of my mouth. Living in
that was your rock bottom.
Yeah. And I had been back and forth to the 12-step program. It just wasn't working because my mind was already on a tangent, and it just it couldn't stay long enough. But for whatever reason, a little over 19 years ago, man, I went to a meeting. Somebody called me out of the blue and said, hey, man, I'll be in Hollywood tonight going to this meeting called the Whatever Meeting if you'd like to go. And I just thought I'd just give it one more chance, because at that point I was homicidal and suicidal. I was going to kill somebody or I was going to kill myself, but somebody was like, I was that bad. Yeah. And I went in, and I remember somebody saying to me, Danny, you're hip, slick, and sick. And if you think sobriety promises you any more than just a one day at a time reprieve from alcohol addiction and drug addiction, you are wrong. And I know you like shiny things, but that's not what the promises, deliver.
Yeah, get that out of your head.
Happy, joyous, and free. Yeah. If you work these steps. And I heard that. And for the first time in my life, sobriety, my first time, if I'm honest, is I thought I'll be a good little boy and you'll return me to vanity, property, prestige, and that's what I was gunning for. Yeah. So my first sobriety, I wanted my old life back. And I thought if I'd be a good boy, God will give it back. The second one, I was like, I don't want anything to do with anything other than a chance at a new life. God, will you allow me to do that? And my second journey, and the journey that I'm on now, began with that prayer, God, please help me. Yeah. It was that simple. And so I've been sober a little over 19. I celebrated it in April 15th. There's no sense of humor there because I fucking taxation is theft. Let me start there. Yeah. And it's tax day, so I never forget that date. No shit. But it's been a wonderful life, and it's been filled with high highs and very low lows. But at the end of it, I wouldn't change a thing. And I heard it said in a meeting, but they said God got me to the meetings and meetings got me to God. And that's been my story. For a long time, I just went with it. I don't have any problems with religion or whatever. I just like, yeah, thank God. Thank God. It's just a thing we say. But in the last couple of years, and I think really started when I moved to Oklahoma, that I just started to feel like if I'm real, then I need to know God in a way that I don't know him, because I feel like it's just something I say. And that works. You fake it till you make it. But there's something more that is calling on my heart, and so when I started to pray, what I got back was just seek me, bro. It don't have to be complicated. You don't have to, you don't have to be in a church either. You don't have to be a monk. You don't have to be church. You don't have to do anything. Just seek me. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. And that's the voice I keep hearing coming back. So I just seek with all my heart when I, and especially, and we were talking on the way here, me and Terry, and all these coincidences kept happening. And I say that word because I don't believe in that coincidence anymore. I know that this is all, and he's like, man, it's crazy. I shared something with him. He's like, that's crazy because someone just shared this with me in a post. And it's just, and that's where I start to see God's hand, right? And I'm not trying to get all, Bible-y or religious, because I'm not even all of that. Right. But I just know that I am not there's a force out there greater than myself, greater than all of us.
You're spiritual,
I'm not
yeah.
it. Yeah. And I do believe in God. And I was rebaptized maybe 2 months ago in the name of Jesus, because that's the name that is on my heart, and that's what I'm trying to know better, which is that. But I don't, I'm not preachy with it, and it's really my just part of my journey.
Yeah.
And in times like these, man, you also need to be spiritually fit more than ever. And so it's where I'm at. But after being off the road for all of those years, and then all of a sudden MySpace comes out, I get sober in 2005. I had a little crazy idea when I was high called the Coca Nostra. I put these little demos on Facebook. I start a Facebook page and it blows up. And it goes so good that we invite a few other dudes from other bands into it. It was kind of like a super group. They were calling it like White Wu-Tang, which is a little bit much. There's we had some hitters, right? We had some heavy hitters in that, a lot more unknown. So good that Everlast sees it, and I ain't talked to him in basically 10 years. He sees it, goes, yo, I want to get down with you. I said, oh, you do? You want to make a song? I was so excited, We rekindle, yeah. And then he's like, no, I want to be in the group. I was like, oh shit. He's like, this is crazy. It can't be true. So we put the group together, but we waited. This is as the record industry is just crumbling.
Yeah.
The industry we once loved and knew well is no longer, it's been dismantled. But at that time we were holding out for $1 million deal, and it was $1 million worth of stuff they were going to get. But labels were just not in positions to offer bands what they used to. And we thought we could get it. So we waited a little too long, but we put out a good record, and it had a cool bunch of guest experiences. Snoop Dogg's on it and Bun B's on it. It was the equal amount of all of this stuff. Wow. This is the first time technically House of Pain's all in the same band, because Lethal was our DJ, and Everlast and Danny Boy were and we got Ill Bill from Nonfiction, and we got this kid Slane from Boston who nobody's heard, and Big Left, and we had a few other people that ended up not fully being realized. But it was on that tour, we went on our first tour that brought us to Oklahoma, and we played the historic Cain's Ballroom, and we had 3 days off, and it was in those 3 days that I go, man, I feel like I've been here before, but I know I've never been to Tulsa. Why does this place feel so familiar? And then I had that epiphany, that God shot. And it was like, oh shit, The Outsiders. And that was my favorite movie at 13. Because when I saw that movie when it first came out in 1983, it was the first time that I ever saw the way I felt inside being portrayed on the screen in a different era.
And it spoke to you, dude.
And it spoke to me. And what the message I got from that was, if life deals you a hand where your own family is non-existent and you're not getting love there, then find the group of guys that's like yourself that have your best interest. Be a greaser, be an outsider, but do it with other people who will look after you and take care of you. And unfortunately, that's what we call gangs. And that's what a lot of kids join.
That sounds like it. That's what I was about to say.
It is. No, but it is. But it's like, when you don't have, mentors and a family that give flying fuck, you're not going to do sports. I mean, my girl's son, all of her sons do sports. It's like a full-time job for the kid and for the parent. Mm-hmm. And that was never going to. So what do you do when you're misguided? You find other misguided kids to do it. But I thought if the best life gets, or if the best life gets is a denim jacket with 5 other dudes just like you, smoking cigarettes, sneaking into movie theaters, chasing girls, fuck it, I can do this, Yeah. So The Outsiders has always been like one of my favorites. So in 2009, we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Very different city than the 2024 Tulsa, Oklahoma. And in the best possible way, that place has grown exponentially and for all the right reasons. But in 2009, it looked like a backlot of a movie studio. It looked like Chicago, 1928, but abandoned, right? Or 1943,
or Detroit, New York
City.
Left.
But without the decay, it looked pristine and sterile. Art Deco masterpiece. It's the oil capital of the world. So it had so much money. All these buildings were built in the 20s and a little bit before. And then the oil companies leave in the 80s, the headquarters they start to go to Texas. And so the money dries up for the businesses downtown, and the downtown just looked like it was put, on ice for 20 years. So I get there in 2009. I have the epiphany that The Outsiders was filmed there. I go looking for locations, and I end up finding The Outsiders house amongst a few other things, and cannot fucking believe it. I take my photo. I post it to this new thing called Facebook. I also took a photo at Cain's Ballroom because my road manager had been talking to the manager of the Cain's, and he was like, somehow he brought up the Sex Pistols had play there. And he goes, oh, Danny Boy is good friends with Steve Jones. And so when I get there to sound check, they go, hey, you heard you're friends with Jonesy. Hey, I want to show you a hole that Sid Vicious allegedly punched in the green room wall
Cool.
in 78 when they played here. And we've cut it out and framed it in the office. So I took a selfie near it. Hey, took one in front of the Outsider's house and I post that on the internet. And for fucking days, my phone wouldn't stop ringing and vibrating. And now 2009, I don't even know if you remember, but social media, you were gun shy about putting a like on anything because you didn't know what that implied. You know, people were like, scroll, just look. We were all window shopping. Now you just trained to just, I like it all. You just like, oh, you know. But back then, man, everybody was losing their minds and they're like, what the fuck? Where are you? I'm like, it's Tulsa. What's a Tulsa? They didn't know what that was. Or I worked on Warner Brothers lot for 20 years. I didn't know we had the house still. I'm like, dude, it's not, it's a real house in Tulsa. And ironically, that house had a for sale sign and they wanted $42,000 for that house. Now, coming from Beverly Hills, now I'm not from Beverly Hills, but I spent my whole sobriety from day one till I left, it was 12 and a half years in Beverly Hills. And I was like 42 grand.
Why did they want so little?
Because Tulsa, Oklahoma house is.
But it's a movie. It's tied to a movie.
You're saying what I said. If you would have found it first, you would have thought what I found. That's what I said. But I didn't. I was like, dude, do not do it because when you are sober, and at the time I maybe had 5 years. I'm not great with math. I have 4 years because 2005, 2009. And there's a thing like never, you know, you don't want to, it could be the proverbial thread that undoes all your shit. Like I have no business, even if I had the 42 cash, which I don't even know if I had that much then, but it wasn't to buy the coolest fort in America for me and my made up greaser friends that live in my head. Yeah. So I just walked away. But what it did was I started to realize, hey man, I'm in an interesting time to be alive right now, an interesting season in my life where I'm sober.
Yeah.
I'm highly caffeinated. I haven't been on the road in close to a decade. So I know what it's like to have that privilege and then to not be able to do any of that. And now there's this thing called the internet. And this tour bus has internet access, albeit slow. We could get access to it. I had a BlackBerry, a laptop, and a flip phone.
Flexing with his BlackBerry.
I was like, bro, I had all the tools. And I'm like, dude, I'm the only dude sober on this bus, so I'm going to take advantage. And I started looking up point of interest.
I'm the only dude sober.
Yeah. So which means I'm up at 8 a.m, ready to go get breakfast, coffee, and see the places, and everybody else is still sleeping.
Yeah.
So I started to look at all of these things, and what I'm fascinated with pop culture. So I started a thing called the Delta Bravo Urban Exploration Team. You can look it up on Facebook. We have people all over the world doing this now. And what it looks like is I'll find a favorite movie, video, TV show, record, album cover, and I'll be like, where was that LL Cool J record filmed, or shot? Where is Foghat fishing in the manhole? And I'll start to do the homework, and I will find the manhole in New York, recreate the photo, put them side by side, and put that and give that to the internet and let them enjoy it. And I started making all kinds of posts about all of the things I was seeing on tour. Mary Tyler Moore statue, right, where she threw her hat in the opening of it. And I'm old, so my mother used to like it, and it was a famous show. The grassy knoll where JFK was shot.
So small.
Here's the before and after. And I put picture in picture. So I'd have the picture of today, and then I put the historic TV shot. And people were like, oh shit, oh yeah, I've been there. But I didn't know about this one, or I didn't know where this one was. And we started to do a collective of people who had the same hobbies. And it's still alive and going now. I don't even do it because I'm in Tulsa full time.
Other people do now, huh?
Yeah. We have a whole gang of people all over the world. Look it up and you'll see what I'm talking about back home. But so for the next 5 years, it became my passion. And I was like, I'm cash poor, but I'm time rich. And if I'm time rich, let me go see as much shit as I can. And I started to get in my car and go all over different states looking for these things. I went up to Stand By Me locations up in Oregon.
That's my favorite movie, by the way,
That's one of my favorites too. Come on, man.
Shit, let's go.
I did all the ones in Southern California that you can imagine. Everything from the Manson Caves to Fast Times at Ridgemount High.
That's great.
Oh, yeah. I know. I went out to the desert where they found him in Barker Ranch. They go from like the macabre to true crime. To record album covers or videos. You could stop and look at the Rock the Casbah video and then go into Austin, in a very different town in 81, 82 than it is today, and see the Burger King or see so that's what we do. We take we take historic photos or anything that you loved growing up, and then we find out where it was. Where's the Cunningham house from Fonzie that they always show? It's a real house.
People think when you're on tour, you get to see all this shit. You don't get to see nothing.
But I did.
Venue and you're out.
When you're sober and you wake up early and you got it, now you have your Magellan in your pocket because you have a smartphone or a laptop.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah.
So I started doing it, became a thing. For the next 5 years, that was my hobby. And I got courted from everybody, starting at Mark Brunette, so the Shark Tank and Survivor.
Yeah.
Somebody in their team saw what I was doing and go, this is a TV show. Get that fucker in here right now.
Yeah.
So we had a handful of meetings with them. It just didn't pan out. Then we went to another place and another, and everybody was coming through every angle. This is a show. This is a show. This is a book. This is a book. This is a documentary. This is a documentary. Right. But if you know Hollywood is like, we love everything about it. We just have to change everything about it for television, and we want to own most of it. And I'm like, eesh. So at the end of the day, it didn't come to fruition, the show. But what it did was everybody goes, how did you start? By the way, I did it with my friend. After I got home, I started to put it online, and this guy just was a new friend that I had met at the time. And he was a former NYPD, now an LAPD. And I'm like, what better? A former criminal like myself who's sober and a fucking active LAPD cop with a badge and a gun. And I'm like, we can go in anywhere we want, can't we? Like, I'm already like, got that ghetto pass, but I'm like, now we really got a pass. And he got a radio too, if anything goes Spanish on us and we can get right, you know what I'm saying? If it goes south, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so we started to do this thing, and we started to pick up all kinds of fans, and they thought it was great. A cop, a robber, blah, 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 blah. This is going to be a great show. Well, it never turned into a show, but what it did was ask the question, how did this start? And I said, well, I guess it started in Oklahoma when I found the Outsider's house. Outsider's house, Outsider's house, Outsider's house. And in the next 5 years, I started to watch some of these historic locations disappear, get torn down, just mostly getting torn down or whatever. And I started to think, what if they tear that Outsider's house down? And then I started to notice every time I would come back to Tulsa, which was about once a year, if not twice a year, between tours or on road trips. And I started to notice the Habitat for Humanities was coming through block by block, tearing down those things. And at year 5, I realized they were 1 block away from the Outsider's house block. And I started to get really nervous about this thing. And it just kept in the back of your head. But it kept coming up. And finally, we make a long story shorter than it has to be, is we found the address to the owner. She had inherited it from her husband who had just passed away, and she didn't know what to do with it. It was a rental property. The tenants were tearing it to shreds and hadn't paid rent in 8 months. So by the time I found her, we just basically called and said, hey, listen, we understand it's off market. We don't know what your plans are with it, but if you ever think of selling it, would you give us a call? And she told my friend who did my bidding on my behalf, she said, your timing is excellent. I'm tired of these fuckers tearing it down. I won't take a penny less than 20 grand. Huh. And my friend said, man, with all due respect, I've seen it. It's a shithole. I won't offer you more than 15 grand. Keep in mind, he's never seen the movie. He's never been to Oklahoma. He's never read the book. And I ended up buying that. That's a good bidder, by the way. Yeah, because that's what you want. Someone has no emotional ties. Yeah. I ended up buying it for $15,000.
Oh my gosh.
I thought I stole it until I got there.
You had to fix it up.
I had no idea what I was getting myself into. All it needed was another $250,000, and it could be just like,
peel back an onion, dude. It gets messy.
And so, but the beauty happens when I get to Tulsa. I never planned on leaving LA. I thought I'd go there and work on it and go back and forth, and that's what I was doing. I was driving back and forth. But the internet was my friend, and I had to be honest with people. I said, hey, listen, I just bought this house. I want to turn it into a museum, but I don't have the wherewithal to do so. Would you help me? And I started a GoFundMe, and the money started to come in. But more than the money, the people in that town started to come over. And they were like, hey, man, I saw you on the news, or I saw you on the internet. Good on you for what you're doing. After soccer practice, me and my daughter will cut your grass every week, and you need it because it's
that's awesome, dude.
Wow.
And the roofers came out and started to do the roofing, and the local hardware place said, we'll give you all the drywall you need. And it just was crazy. And people just started collectively. And I met the author around that time, and she gave me a $10,000 check. And I was like,
you're a big fan to her, right?
Yeah, I love her,
Huge.
And people were doing gifts in kind, or they were bringing over, cases of soda and pizza and beer, even though I don't drink. The other people, they were like, here's a case of Budweiser's and some Coney Island hot dogs. We're like, thank you so much. It was literally, they put me on their back and held me on high. And every time I'd go back to LA, I'm like, why the fuck am I coming back here, man? All the
Everybody's so
stuff I
fake
love
out
is-
here.
Everything I love is in Oklahoma, man. It's just like authentic people,
Yes.
people who are willing to go out of their way to support your dreams. The God consciousness that was there, the peace that was there, Route 66 is there, the drive-in from the Outsiders is still there, the Circle Cinema from there is still there, the Arkansas River passes. I was just like, this place is beautiful, man. So I ended up just relocating full-time. I've been there for 6 years. I love it. We built it for about 3.5 years, man. And I even got celebrity help. I was struck at my GoFundMe. We asked for 75 grand, which is a lot, but it's not much in the grand scheme. We got around
For what that house needed.
Right. Well, we got about 40 grand. No, 55 grand when Jack White decided to come through.
Oh, hell yeah.
He
dude.
played at our baseball stadium the first time ever for the minor league team for the Dodgers.
Cool.
And he was a fan of the Outsiders. So they asked me to bring him a book from S.C. Hinton autographed and some stuff from the museum. And I did. And even though we weren't open, we were still struggling to get it open. And I met him and he said, man, I would love to come by tomorrow and see what you're working on. I thought, yeah, sure, buddy. I'll be around. And sure as shit, he came by and he walked through it and I could just see his gears turning. And he said, so why aren't you open yet? And I said, we're about $30,000 off. And he said, well, I want to give you $30,000 from last night's gig and get you over the hump. And I was like, oh my God, dude. And there was
when was this?
2016, 17,
So that's when you
18, 19.
He's no mathlete. He's
I'm
already said it.
trying to figure. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. Well, because it was before we were open. I think we cut the ribbon on that in 2016. I could be wrong, but ironically enough, like a week later, so it made national news, that story, which was great, and it was what a blessing, right?
And the town loves it. They
Yeah,
all are
everybody
invested in
loves
it too.
Yeah, and he was living in Tulsa for a while. He had a girl living there, and he bought a house over there. But we would see him around, and then he's not there anymore, I don't think. But about a week or two later, Billy Idol comes to town. And so I go meet Billy Morrison, and it's just me by myself. And I always come with swag. I'm the guy, I always have
I saw it today.
Run the guy's house and hats or whatever. So I bring an Outsider shirt and a few of them, and I get there, and I'm in the green room talking with the band, and Steve Stevens is there, and Billy Morrison is there, and they're I know one of their guy, Jimbo, used to be on, and then the guy on the board too is my boy Joel. And we're just, yucking it up. And then somebody comes out and goes, Danny, Billy'd like to see you in his dressing room, mate. I'm like, okay. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I went back there and he goes, hey, mate, good to see you. He goes, how you going? I'm like, it's going good. He goes, so you love it out here, eh? I said, yeah, Tulsa's such a great place, man. He goes, and I heard you bought a house. I'm like, oh, no, I live at the museum. I live at the Mayo Hotel in downtown Tulsa, which is this beautiful historic hotel. And I still live there now. But he's like, you bought a house? I'm like, no, I live at the hotel. He goes,
You live at a hotel?
right. Yeah, it's great. Well, floors 10 to 17 is all are converted into apartments. And I live at the top floor at that hotel.
That's killer, dude.
The top floor at that hotel for a fraction of what I paid in Beverly Hills.
Oh, of course,
and with a 160-something degree view of everything I'd like to see. So when Billy Idol said you bought a house, I thought he meant I bought a house in Tulsa for myself. So I said, no, I live at the Mayo Hotel. He goes, mate, the Outsider's house. And I was like, that I bought it. I was like, the 13-year-old who saw that movie and was dripping was also a 13-year-old, 14-year-old who loved Billy Idol so bad that he was bleaching his hair and trying to be, if I could, if there was if you could take Billy Idol and Matt Dillon's portrayal of Dallas Winston and you put those two icons, that's who I wanted to be so bad it hurt. So the fact that Billy fucking Idol knew that I bought the Outsider's house was bonkers to me.
Yeah.
And then he said, I heard Jack gave you $30,000. And I said, he did. He goes, I want to give you some money too. I said, now I can't believe it. I'm pinching myself. I said, you do? He goes, yeah, not 30 grand, but let me know how I can get you a check. And he sent me a beautiful check. I've scanned it. I've got it framed in my own little world.
That's cool.
I've blocked out the numbers, Billy. Don't worry. There'll be no, posting on the internet. But can you imagine being listen, we were talking earlier in my life and as it pertains to the industry and all of the pop culture shit.
Yeah.
If I could deduce it in the simplest terms, there's swans and there's ducks.
Yeah.
I'm a duck, bro. I want to be a swan. I was hoping that God would see me as a swan, right? Jimi Hendrix is a swan, right? These people come out, Robert Plant and Jimmy Page are swan. I'm a fucking duck, dude. I'm lucky to be alive in the first place, much less lucky to be had found some success in the industry that I grew up loving every piece of. But I never forget that I'm a fucking duck. So the fact that I own the Outsiders House Museum, and not because it's an asset, it's just like the fact that I was able to secure that house and then turn it into a museum with the help of everybody in Tulsa and all the fans.
So many people.
And then that fucking Billy fucking Idol not only knew who I was, but knew what I was doing in my personal life and then wanted to write me a fucking check out of his fucking personal account or his hard-earned money for to support a vision that I had, which I'm not a fucking math guy, but Billy's older than me. I'm 55. I know that. We all know that.
Right.
So do you think The Outsiders was a film that would have been something that he would have? No. Fucking Duff McKagan told me. I'm fucking cool with Duff, right? Guns N' Roses played Tulsa. I said, bro, you got to come by the museum. He goes, I'm like, bro, it's a story written by a 15, and he goes, I'm familiar with it. He goes, dude, I was doing blow off the fucking bathroom toilets at that age when it came out, so it's not my thing. So I try to explain to him what The Outsiders. He goes, no, dude. My daughters both have read it. My one daughter did it in the play. When it's open, I'll come back with them. I'll do the whole fucking family thing. Right. But it put it into perspective. Right. I love Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I'm 55. My sister loved Clueless. Two different fucking worlds, but both equally, right? For the age, a couple of years difference makes all the difference, right? But I know I've told you a lot, but I want you to know the thing that's the most beautiful about all this, besides the help and being humble. So I had to humble myself. I'm a 6'6" alpha male, and I had to say, I don't know the difference between drywall and sheetrock. And people are like, they're the same fucking thing, guy. Yeah. I'll be over in 20 minutes. I'll help you out. Yeah. And they built that thing for me. I really just stepped out of my way, was humble and asking for the help constantly, and the help kept coming. But this thing is so fucking powerful, it's ridiculous. I thought I was building a museum for middle-aged guys like myself to come look at switchblades and leather jackets. And
I was about to say, what relics are in there?
All of them. It's hard to tell you what I don't have. What I don't have is the Madra jacket from Leif Garrett, the Sos jacket, and nobody has the real knives, but I'm told I'm going to get. And this is the first time I'm telling anybody about this from Buddy Joe Hooker, who was the stuntman on this thing, and he said he has the butterfly knife from 2-Bit, and he's like, "Did you want that? I'll give you that." And he's literally going to give me that knife, the knife. But all of that to say, this whole thing starts with the book. The book was written in 1965, 66 from a 15-and-a-half-year-old student at Will Rogers High School. She fails English that year and gets a D+ in creative writing. They published the book in 1967. They go under basically not an alias, but they don't want you to know that it's Susan Eloise Hinton because boys will not read a book by a girl if they know that. So they call her S.E. Hinton. It has not only been a time-honored classic for over 55 years, it has never been out of print. I mean, dude, that never been out of print. I think like the Bible, the Torah, and maybe the Quran can share that same those accolades. And it inadvertently starts a new book category, which is the young adult literature category, which is the number one selling category to date in literature. It was all started by that 15-and-a-half-year-old girl named Susan Eloise Hinton, who's still very much alive and well. And she's the number one supporter cash wise in the blessing wise of saying this is something good. But me and my girl just came back from New York with more than half of anybody who's notable in Tulsa from the Broadway play, The Outsiders, the musical, which just got nominated for 12 Tony Awards, which is only 2 other musicals in the history of musicals have got nominated for more, which is at 13. This thing is alive and well. The Outsiders is taught to most 7th and 8th graders. It's required reading. It is. Our museum is open 3 days a week to the public. It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 11 till 4, but we do Monday through Thursday for school tours. We brought over 4,000 kids last year who are reading the book and then see the movie at the Choco Cinema or in class if they're lucky, and then come to our museum where it feels like you're walking back in time. The house has been restored to movie magic glory. Plus, it has the largest collection of screen-worn wardrobe books. It's been translated in over 30
and you're
languages.
When your door opens.
Crazy. No, I'm not running shit. I got out of the way. I was smart. My boy Donnie Rich runs it for me.
Oh, okay.
I can barely run my laundry, brother.
I just thought you answered the door. Welcome, kid.
No. I don't. But it's a good. I'm glad you brought it up because the truth is, I couldn't run it even if I wanted to. And this is something beautiful that when people see your vision and they know that it's real and you're coming from the right place, these problems that I thought, how will I do the museum? People thought I was crazy when I told them I bought a house in Tulsa and I'm making a museum.
You
They
have
thought
to
I
say it twice
relapsed.
to everybody you tell about. You have to say it twice.
Yeah, they
What?
thought I relapsed. They thought I had a side piece. They didn't know what I was wanted for, you know, but now I look like the smartest dude. You know what I mean? So they're like, dude. And this thing is blowing up. And every year something new. I brought a book for Charlie. And Charlie, you were missed. We're going to have to do a part 2 with the full gang. I saw what you guys did to Billy Morrison. You guys had to attack him with like 7 dudes.
Yeah.
I only got 2 of you guys. So I think I could take these 2. No offense. But, you know, he's got a sailor hat but all that to say, you know, we're publishing books out of there. We're doing student tours in the thousands now. And people are coming from all over the world to see this house. Now the musical, once people start to see it in droves, which they will, and as it starts to tour, this thing is just it's as current as anything you could ever imagine, and it's still reaching the hearts, minds, of people of all age. It has the widest swath of target audience that you could imagine.
I think it's a great movie. I remember seeing it when I was
and it's
younger.
a great book.
Yeah, and my daughters, like you said, in school, they were in middle school.
Yeah.
They'd be like, "Hey, what do you got there?" And
it's
I'm like, what? And then I'm like, you know, I have the VHS and DVD. You got to watch it.
And now there's a Broadway musical.
Yeah.
And the story never gets old because it's the story of growing up in the haves and the have-nots. And no matter which category you fall in, the struggle is to find the center, to find the same sunset. And that's the beauty in the book. It says, you know, although our lives were completely different, it was amazing to me that we saw the same sunset. And for me, I look for that. I got opinions. I vote one way. I think one way. Like but I'm always willing to say, hey, you could be diametrically opposed to everything I stand for.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Let's talk about it. So in that, when it says we saw the same sunset, what I get from that, which is very powerful for me, that means we could be complete rivals, arch enemies. And we both look up at that sunset and go, that's beautiful. By default, that brought us one step closer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's my job to keep looking for things. And that brings me closer to all of God's children. Black, white, or pinstripe, Republican, Democrat, blah, blah, blah. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck. The point is, what I do give a fuck about is trying to build bridges and not walls.
Yeah.
And back in the days, bro, I was the opposite. I'm trying to knock you out the box, get out the game. Fuck it. There's not enough room for all of us. There's not enough. That's fear driven. That's fear-based. Mm-hmm. I spent most of my life being fear-based. I'm not fear-based anymore because I believe what's meant for me won't miss me. I can fuck it up. I got free will, but I don't think that there's a scarcity at the top at all. Mm-hmm. And I found like the more I give, the more I get, whether that's in the most important thing you can give anybody is your time. That's why I basically fell in love with my girl. She's beautiful, but I saw her dedication to her sons and giving of her time in a way when you're busy trying to do it. It's easy when you can do it. You know what I mean? It's easy when you ain't got nothing else. When you have to make an intentional sacrifice to do that, that's what's impressive to me. Mm-hmm. The way so I try to be more like that, you know, more like the people that I look up to now are very different than the people that I grew up looking like and wanting to be like. Yeah. And listen, it got me here. But as I'm here now, it would be disingenuous for me to come up here and tell you that, I built this cool museum and it's all me. It has very little to do with me. I had a great idea, a crazy idea.
You're a good delegator.
And people, and I find the parts that make it work. So I'm really good at team building with people that other people would think, I don't see a worth in them. They're not shit. Well, you say that, let me put them all at the same table and watch what we achieve. So that has been, and then seeing a tipping point. I've always been able, it's been what's kept me safe for all these years, is to be able to see an anomaly in the, and I think anybody who's good and keen with like music and vibe, and I can notice something standing out here. Something ain't right. Whether it's something, we're in the room and someone's going to get eaten, you know, or like, there's an old saying, if you're at a poker table and you don't know who the fool is, it's you. If you can't see the fool, you're the fool. Yeah. Well, I can get into rooms and kind of get a good temperature on things, and I trust my intuition. And I think now in a world where AI is real, really real, where deep fakes, you know about all that?
Hell yeah.
It's really real.
Terrifying.
You can't be, the old thing used to be like, believe half of what you see, hear and a whatever, a fraction of what you see. You can't trust that now.
No.
Because I could be
Have you
Terry.
seen some wild shit, dude?
Yeah, but you can't trust your eyes or ears anymore.
Yeah.
But what they can't not do is your gut.
That's right, dude.
And that's your
what I'm saying.
God-given intuition. Every time I talk to somebody, they go, bro, being sober.
It will save your fucking life.
Well,
dude,
every time
your
I talk to
gut.
somebody, they go, yeah, but bro. And I was like, well, what did your gut tell you about her? I know, but bro, I can fix it.
Yeah.
Well, you had the information. You didn't want to believe it because you just thought it's my gut, but your head told you different. I never trust this thing.
No.
I don't even have to listen to this thing. I was told you don't even have to believe the shit you think, Danny. Because a lot of times the things I think are fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But what I do trust is my gut. And it's been my saving grace and common sense. That's why I'm a conservative. I don't mind telling anybody. That's why just make it make sense. It's that Occam's razor. Like the most simple explanation is usually the truest. Like I don't need all the fucking, and so I'm very centered in that. And I owe it all to my recovery and to God, and the opportunities that come my way are just so that I feel that I can tell my story. And if one person goes, oh my God, I remember listening to you. We used to do the same shit you do. And there's a way out of that. You could still, you have done all that. Now there's a second thing. There's no
chapters.
Right.
Yes.
Mickey Mantle said it best. He said, if I would have known I lived this long, I would have taken better care of myself.
Of course.
And I thought 21, what my mother said would be it. At 21, I was already fucking a millionaire and ruling the world with House of Pain. But I had no life skills or I wasn't equipped for anything past that. And it's taken me years to fucking just to get to where I'm at now. And the best thing I can say to anybody is go where the love is. It's that simple. I stopped trying to fit square pegs in round holes. I stopped trying to be important to people who if they don't give me, equal amount of, or reciprocate in the love, then it's not meant to be. But I spent many years trying to be somebody else that you'd like me.
A chameleon.
Yeah.
Right.
And now, we were talking on the way in, me and Terry, man, we need our own podcast just in the GMC. We just me and him. But I don't wear a mask anymore because I want my people to recognize me.
Yeah.
And I mean, the people who don't know me but are looking for me, they don't recognize me if I'm being somebody I'm not.
Right.
So if I'm authentic, good, bad, or indifferent, my people will find me.
Right.
And so those are the little things that, man, have saved the day for me. I get to do this. I don't have to do anything, man. Taxes, we got to do. I fucking hate that. Did I tell you?
Yeah.
That's that.
April 15th, we went to
fucking.
Speaking of bringing people together, everybody, we've got a segment now that you're going to love to participate in because you've got the most life advice of anybody in this room.
All right.
Of the stuff it's 412-4 advice. We have an advice line where people call in and ask for advice.
Oh,
from
I
us.
like it.
It's hard to believe that we're even qualified to dole it out. And so it's not always good advice, but we will give advice on some of these calls.
Unsolicited.
I've heard a lot of them, and here we go.
Eric, bring up our
Eric, you ready?
first one.
All right, we got to, since we're going a little bit long, let's just do 2 of these, but they're quality calls, I promise. Right. Here we go.
Hey, this is Matt in Nashville, and I desperately need some advice. I've been seeing this girl for about a year now, and we consistently go out to eat every week, at least once a week. And, around the first of the trip, I picked up the bill all the time, but now as we've progressed in our relationship, I'm still picking up the bill every meal. This girl's got a job and she's very able to pay the bill, but she won't ever do it. And I'm just needing some advice on how to approach her on, having her pick up the bill. Help. I need some help.
Man, you're not a gentleman.
Well, it's one thing to think that. I think everybody's been in a position to think that. But to call an advice line and be like, this is my name and this is what I'm going through is pretty ballsy. I mean, it is 2024 though. So
It's
like,
true.
Well, I mean, I guess I just be honest, go like, hey, I've been paying for all these, it's making me call a hotline to get help.
Yeah.
It's bothering me.
and what is he not telling us?
yeah,
She's probably
yeah.
paying the mortgage and he's like,
Yeah.
listen, I keep paying for this broad's meal every time we go out.
I mean,
So you're right. It's the gentleman thing to do.
it is the
And
gentleman.
if you
thing
love
to-
somebody, I will always pay. If you're romantic, like me and my
Yeah.
girl, I always want to, and I always expect to because that's what we do.
That's what we
right?
do. Yes.
But I understand. I've dated people where I feel like you're kind of just here because
For the
all
meal,
the shit that
that's
I
it.
can apply, like all the shit that you could get And if you start to feel like that, then trust your instinct. Maybe it's not the one. But I don't think I've ever felt like that when I know that it's real. Like I just don't even think about it.
Yeah,
And it's awkward when they try to pay. So because I don't, it's like, you know what I mean?
So listen, dude, you
Or learn to
cheap
cook.
shit. Yeah, you cheap shit.
I mean, I'm cheap, but I wouldn't do that.
It's a conundrum no matter what, depending on where you're at, man. And depending how much money you have too, it could be a big deal. If someone doesn't reciprocate, and if he doesn't have it like that, and she knows that, and she's still she's not even, maybe she should learn to cook. Okay?
Yeah.
And she's not sleeping with him. That could be another problem.
Oh, dude, that's next level.
All right, what's the next caller?
Hey, this is a random guy. I've been dating this girl for a while, and well, I have a foot fetish. And she wouldn't let me see her feet for at least the first 6 months of our relationship, even in the summer. She didn't wear flip-flops, open-toed shoes, and I'm thinking, what's the deal with her feet? So anyways, finally we get to the point in the relationship where she's coming out of the shower and I see her feet. And my God, this is a pretty girl, but she's got the nastiest feet I've ever seen. She has some crooked, jacked up toenails. She had heels all cracked up like they've been dried up and set in the sun. I mean, she needs a manicure like I've never seen. So these things are going to take like industrial strength grinders to get them back into shape. I don't know what she's been on. I don't know if she served time in Vietnam or what. Their feet look like alligators. So anyways, I'm trying to figure out what's the best way for me to approach her about her feet.
Okay, obviously a pedicure, right? It doesn't send a message that your feet are fucking disgusting. It just is like, hey, it's a spa day for you.
If she knows her feet are disgusting, it definitely sends a message. Not only is it disgusting, I see it.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to, but if you would, I mean, we're talking to adults here. Like if you know it's an issue, go handle it. Go get her done.
6 months they were dating, right? Is that what
Yeah.
he said? Yeah. So
6 months.
And he's finally seeing the feet. Well, now it seems like she's now comfortable in the relationship with him to show her feet. And he's just kind of disgusted by it. So, I mean.
Yeah, but the caveat is he got a foot fetish. So normally,
That's right. That's right.
Normally,
that's
no.
the whole thing.
I don't either.
I don't
But
either,
if they're
yeah.
nasty looking, it could be problematic. But it's a package deal. You rate it for all of its attributes, not just the one. And in that, if you got a foot fetish though, and it looks like what he's saying, like, then
That's bad news.
he's probably not going to be happy long term with that.
Yeah, I mean, just talk to her about it and get the grinder out, I guess, if you got one. I don't know.
These are real calls or what?
Yeah, they
you
call
gotta do
into
it
our
in disguise
hotline.
late at night. You're
No,
like, this is Joe.
I don't have that much
Because you
time
have
to
shit
do
you
that.
want to know, but you don't want to say it's you. So you're like, let's see what these guys.
That's funny. That's
Really cool. Some ringers.
Danny boy, it's been great having you in here.
Listen,
Yes.
I not for
How much
nothing.
fun.
I know you guys are. It's Mother's Day weekend coming up.
Oh,
and
thanks for
everybody's been-
reminding me,
Come
dude. I
on.
gotta get on.
Man, David.
It's not too late, bro. And I would definitely. I'm a Mopar guy. I saw that Charlie has a nice, incredible car collection back there.
Yeah.
1970 Chargers is a beaut. And I definitely, just from the little bit of what I've seen of Alabama, it reminds me of growing up and being on those road trips, back roads, lush green things, farmhouses. I love it. So I want to come back.
Yeah,
dude,
we'd love to have you
I'd love
back.
to have when the whole gang is here and we can stay a little longer. And,
Yeah, dude.
Again, shout out to I get to see Billy Morrison and Billy Idol and Steve Stevens. They're playing in Tulsa next week at the Hard Rock Cafe, which is an incredible thing to see them off campus for me, being from LA, because LA can be pretentious, man. But to see him in my backyard now, and the support he's given me, and now Billy's hooked me up with this. I feel like we're fast friends, and what Billy does for you too. If you ever need I got a whole Rolodex of really cool people too, and hopefully we come back every couple of years, or like a couple times a year, to hang out,
absolutely,
and yuck it up, and give me that phone number. I'll call in for the. I got some questions I want to know, but I don't want you to know it's me. So.
What? Do you have your own social media?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's Danny Boy O'Connor. You'll find me. It's
Instagram.
Danny at this point. And I'm not being like,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there's no wwws dot. Yeah. I'm easy to find. And,
dude.
if you ever come through Tulsa, Oklahoma, I'd love to give you the nickel tour.
Oh man.
It's an incredible place, man. I never, in a million years I wouldn't have thought I would be anywhere besides LA or New York, because those are, all I knew and all I cared about. But I have found a whole new life in the center of the U.S. And to me, it's a magical place, man.
That's awesome, man.
I think I'm doing comedy in Tulsa coming up later this year. So,
and if you do the Brickyard, which is also in Oklahoma City, I've been out there a few times. My buddy Jimmy Falia has just he's a dope comedian, and Dave Landau. One of them's at the Blaze TV, and he does a podcast called Normal World. We just did it a couple of days ago. And then Jimmy Falia, I don't know if you know who he is. He's got like one of the biggest shows on Fox now called Fox Across America. Saturday Night Fox. But he's a brilliant comedian and political, commentator. But comedy is a thing, man. And I mean, it's a thing in the sense that like it almost everything. From that, everything grows out of sitcoms, the writing in there, the comics are some of my favorite people as well.
Me too. That's why I started doing it from the hang.
I'd love to see it, and if it sucks, I'll gong you. But if it's
dude, that's what I want. I want honesty out of me.
Okay.
Well, thank y'all for tuning in this week, and thanks again, Danny Boy, for being here, and we will see y'all again next week.